Hello, everyone. I'll be sharing with you the upcoming Sunday school lesson for adults for February the 19th. It again is on the theme of those called by God, and the lesson title is called Responsibility of Those Called, coming from the book of James, chapter 2, verses 1 to 12. The book of James has always been one of my favorite New Testament books. It is generally believed that although James was a rather common name, that this particular James was one of the brothers of Jesus of Nazareth. We might call him a half-brother since James's biological father was probably Joseph, certainly not God. And I say probably Joseph because at a certain point in the gospel narrative, Joseph is never mentioned again, which leads one to wonder, did something happen to Joseph? It also seems that this particular James was skeptical of Jesus being God until Jesus' death and resurrection. We do not know of his salvation moment, but when we get to the book of Acts, this James is identified as one of the primary leaders in the early church along with Peter and John. Paul and Barnabas and Silas and some others would come a bit later. It is also believed that this James became the leader, much like a bishop, of the Jerusalem and Judean Christians. He also proved to be quite wise in dealing with the contentions between the Jewish and Gentile Christians. A great summary of the book of James is faith works. While some have tried to say that James was more about works and Paul was more about faith, I sincerely believe that they were wrong, that both James and Paul emphasized faith and works as necessary, indispensable for Christian living. For my interpretation of this lesson, I want to talk with you about three themes from these verses. The first is equality or equity. Equality referring to the status of a human being, and equity about the results among relationships among humans. James preached about not showing favoritism based upon race or religion or wealth or any other human factor that might exist. And although a secular world will never be able to achieve equality or equity between human beings, the church should at least try, should try its best. And if any institution can achieve equality and equity, it will be the church. James was describing a situation that regularly happened in his world. It certainly happened in Jewish circles. People with money got special privileges. They got a better seat at the table of life. Jesus himself said to not take the better seat, but to take a back seat or a lesser seat. And if the host wants to move you up, then that decision is made by the host, not you. Jesus also said to not boast about your giving ability, but to give in secret. If you go to a sporting event, you probably see the words equality and equity, along with other words like diversity. But the truth is that they aren't attainable in the way that the world wants, because it just does not work. Biological males playing in women's sports is neither equality nor equity, not even close. Hiring practices based upon race in the workforce simply do not work. College enrollment or college awards based upon race also do not work. Some of the most discriminatory things done happen in the quest or demand for equality or equity. Yet, Christian equality and equity is based upon humility and love and commitment to God's church as the qualifying factors. The second theme would be about the responsibility of the rich. James speaks of the rich exploiting the poor. So let's ask this question: how can the rich dishonor the poor. Now, there are many, many ways, but let's think about James's world where the rich were using their advantages to take the poor to court knowing that they would win. So let me use this as an example. A rich Christian owns 10 houses. He lives in one, he rents out the other 9. And one of his tenants loses his job and cannot make the rent payment. Should the Christian owner take the jobless man to court to evict him? Or, say, put a lien on his vehicle or some other possession? If the jobless man is a Christian, should the rich owner do more to help him than to, say, help someone who is not a Christian? Now, my answer is that the rich man should try to help, not hurt. Maybe help the man find a new job, or maybe give him a financial break. Also, my answer is that we try to help all people, Christian or not, and try to treat all the same. I have said before that there is nothing noble in being poor. There is nothing noble in living on the street. There is nothing noble in being delinquent in one's financial responsibilities. Yes, Jesus had a special love for the poor, and we should do all that we can to help and elevate the status of the poor, but without enabling bad behavior. The third theme is the royal law. In verse 8, the royal law is to love one another as yourself. We might call that the golden rule, the royal law. It is royal not because kings and other royalty do this or promote this, but because it is God's law. And God, Jesus and God are the king, the only true king. So royalty comes from divine authority. Love means not showing favoritism or picking winners and losers. James understood the concept of law. As a good Jew, he was raised to live the Jewish law, to know it, memorize it, live it. For us, we advocate living the 10 Commandments. The first 4 commandments identify our commitments to God. No other gods, no graven images, not taking God's name in vain, honoring the Sabbath. They speak to loving God with all one's heart, mind, soul, strength. The second 6 commandments identify our commitments to others. Honor our parents. Do not kill or commit adultery, referring to any sexual sin. Do not steal or bear false witness, meaning to never lie or tell untruths. And do not covet. All of these commandments are about loving others, loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. It means that we treat everyone right and with honor, and we are always honest and respectful. I love verse 12. It says, quote, "Speak and act as those who are going to be judged by the law that gives freedom." What a wonderful verse. In closing, on page 87 of the Learner's Guide is a story of a pastor who disguised himself as a homeless man as he sat on the steps of his church as it was time for church to begin. His congregation walked by, going into the church sanctuary, and none of them stopped to assist him. Well, obviously, he revealed himself to them some minutes later, and when he did, they were embarrassed at their behavior. Pastor Rigby had done this same thing. Some might call it a stunt, but certainly a powerful object lesson with 2 previous congregations. And the 2 previous congregations had tried to help him by giving him food or a blanket and money. So how do we live out Jesus' command found in Matthew 25, verse 40, which says, quote, "Inasmuch as you have done it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you have done it to me." May you have a wonderful week. Happy Valentine's Day. Hope to see many of you Wednesday for senior meal and next Sunday for worship. God bless.